"Mom, that's my brother," the little boy told his millionaire mother when he spotted a barefoot boy, hungry and pale, sitting on the street. What did he mean? He'd never had a brother, or so she was told. But who was this boy who looked nothing like her son, and yet his son knew him too well? Listen to today's story until the end, and please also share where you're listening from. The sunlight bounced off the city towers as 6-year-old Lucas, dressed neatly in a navy blue suit, held tightly onto his mother's hand. They had just left a metropolitan charity gala, a fundraiser where the city's elite laughed softly over champagne in glass-paneled halls. As always, Lucas was quiet, polite, well-behaved, and used to stillness. His mother, Eleanor Prescott, exuded sophistication. A tall woman in beige heels and tailored suits, she carried herself as though life was always predictable and neatly resolved. But what happened that afternoon wasn't something any schedule could have prepared her for. While walking near Madison Street, Lucas suddenly halted, his hand squeezed Eleanor's tighter. "Lucas?" she asked, glancing down. "What is it?" Lucas said nothing. His eyes were glued to something ahead. Against a wall near an overflowing trash bin crouched a thin boy, barefoot, shirtless, and covered in dust. He couldn't have been more than 8. His ribs strained against his skin, and his hollow eyes showed only hunger. He held a wrinkled cardboard sign in his lap. It read simply, "Food." For a few long moments the two boys locked eyes. Then Lucas spoke, barely audible. "Mom, he's my brother." Eleanor blinked. "I beg your pardon?" Lucas's voice cracked. "That's Jaden. He used to feed me when we were little. In that place? The one with the green beds? When I had nightmares, he held my hand." Eleanor's eyebrows drew together. "Lucas, honey, you've never had a brother." "Yes, I did," he said shakily. "Before you and Dad brought me here, when I didn't have suits. When I was cold." Eleanor felt something unfamiliar stir deep within, an unease she hadn't experienced in years. She glanced back at the boy. He was staring up at her, not with anger or hope, but simply watching. Eleanor tried to move them along. "Come now, darling, let's keep walking." But Lucas pulled his hand away. "No," he cried, "he's my big brother. He always shared, even when he was starving." People began to stare. Drivers slowed down. Eleanor's cheeks flushed. Lucas released her hand completely and walked toward the boy. His polished shoes clicked softly on the sidewalk. Inside, the name echoed, "Jaden." That name was etched into Lucas's memory like it had always belonged to him. And even though Jaden looked older, taller, rougher, and even though they didn't look alike, none of that mattered. Jaden had once been the only soul who cared for him. "Jaden," Lucas whispered. The boy looked up, confused, like he was dreaming. Then something in his face shifted. His jaw trembled. "Lou?" Lucas ran to him, arms flung around the bony shoulders. Jaden didn't move at first. Then slowly, his hand rose and rested gently on Lucas's back. Eleanor stood motionless, her hand suspended midair. This wasn't fantasy. It was memory. All of it had happened 5 years earlier, when Lucas was barely over a year old. Eleanor and her husband had adopted him through a private agency overseas. The adoption had been smooth, the documentation sparse. They were told he had been abandoned, spent a brief time in a foster center. They never knew he hadn't been alone. No mention of another child. No mention of Jaden. As a small crowd gathered, Eleanor stepped forward. Her voice wavered. "You know each other?" Jaden looked up, shielding his eyes from the sun. "I used to feed him porridge when the workers forgot. I told him stories to help him sleep. He didn't talk much, but he always fell asleep beside me." "Why are you here?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "They never picked me," he replied quietly. "Said I had lung problems. Said no one would want me." He didn't cry, didn't beg. He just held Lucas like someone who had shielded him through countless storms. And Eleanor understood then. Her son hadn't found a stranger. He'd found someone he already loved. Someone who had once given him comfort when the world had none. That night, Eleanor sat alone at her mahogany desk, her tears streaking the perfectly set makeup on her face. The house was silent. Lucas had cried himself to sleep, repeating Jaden's name as though afraid it would fade. Eleanor was not the type to fall apart. She was practical, controlled. But now she stared at the photo she'd snapped on her phone, Lucas hugging the boy on the street. Jaden, sitting motionless like someone who believed he didn't deserve to be remembered. At midnight, she called her private investigator. "I need everything. Adoption files, orphanage records, hospital logs. Anything from Lucas's early life. If there's a boy named Jaden, I need to know why they were separated." What was uncovered the next day shattered her. Lucas and Jaden had arrived at the same orphanage. same week. Nearly the same age, height, weight, even similar illnesses. Their intake file showed they had shared a room. One line even listed Jaden beside Lucas's name, until someone had drawn a red line through it and written, deemed unfit. Adoption not advised. And like that, Jaden disappeared from the records. Eleanor's hands shook as she read the file again and again. No one had ever told them about a second boy. The next morning, Eleanor returned to that same corner, praying Jaden hadn't disappeared again. He hadn't. Still there, still sitting in the same spot. This time with an untouched sandwich from a passerby. But when he saw Lucas, his eyes lit up. Lucas darted across the sidewalk and embraced him tightly. Eleanor knelt down beside them. "Jaden, I want to bring you home," she said softly. "At least, until we figure this out." Jaden stared. "Why?" "Because I should have asked about you long ago," she said. "And because my son, your brother, never forgot you." In the days that followed, Eleanor used every connection she had. Emergency placement, legal orders, DNA testing. On the 6th morning, just before sunrise, her lawyer handed her the papers. A 99.9% sibling match, not biologically, but through shared history. The same home, the same records, the same care number. 2 boys, torn apart by a red pen and someone's cold decision. Found again by the heart of a 6-year-old in a small suit. Eleanor held a press conference, not for attention, but to bring truth to light. "We thought adopting Lucas meant giving him a better life," she said. "We didn't know he already had someone who loved him as a brother. We weren't told. And that silence cost these children 5 years. Her voice cracked. "This is Jaden," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder as he stood beside Lucas. "He isn't broken. He isn't less. He's brave. And from today forward, he's home." The crowd stood. Some wept. And for the first time in years, Jaden smiled. Months passed. Jaden started school, his first real class. Reading was hard, but he excelled in numbers. Every morning, Lucas held his hand and proudly said, "This is my big brother." Eleanor arranged therapy, tutoring, art classes, and something more permanent, a real bed, a nameplate, a space in the family photo, a future. And on Jaden's 9th birthday, she gave him something deeply personal, a laminated copy of that cardboard sign, food. Below it, in gold letters, she'd written, "You asked for food. You gave love. And now you have everything." Because some families are created by fate, but others are held together by children who never stop remembering each other. And Lucas, he didn't just find a boy on the street that day. He found the part of himself that had always been missing, a brother, forever. What would you have done if your child pointed to a stranger on the street and said, "That's my brother"? Would you have stopped to find out the story and give the hungry child a second chance at life? Please share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. We'd love to know. Also, if this story touched your heart, please give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more emotional, powerful, and surprising stories. Thank you for listening to Storyline Narratives.